It's really exciting to be here. They asked how I wanted to sit on this stage, and I chose a chair. And the reason I chose a chair is because I wanted to have a bit more of a discussion. Conferences are always loud and very boxy, in my opinion. And I find that to be so antithetical to the space that we operate in. We are so ambiguous in crypto. It's astounding the space that we're operating in, whether it's technology or finance and the intersection of all of these places. It is such a treat to get to play in that ambiguity. But that's also what I want to talk with you about today. So, for those who are listening, are any of you part of DAOs, communities, online groups? Yeah? And do they generally feel ambiguous? Yeah, okay. Immediate head nods. So before I get into that, I want to make sure I introduce myself. I'm Kristen Stone. I'm the co-founder of Apiary, and we are an applied research firm that builds bespoke governance systems. And anytime I say that, people say, "What is that?" Because bespoke is, well, bespoke. And I always encourage people to go online to apiary.xyz. You can read our writings. The concept and the information that is governance are incredibly vast, incredibly ambiguous. We're using the term in 1,000 different ways. And so part of what we'd like to do is build our research, build that information so that we have a shared set of language to use. All right. Well, I remember thinking about decentralized operations back in 2014 when I joined Coinbase and when Bitcoin was the only token we had. You're looking scared for me, and I understand that. It was scary, and it has been scary to be in this space for so long. It's also incredibly inspiring. So really what I want to narrow us down into is what's hindering our ability to operate in a decentralized manner, right? Why is it so ambiguous? Why does everybody nod and think to themselves, like, how do we do this? What are we doing? And over again, I continue to come back to this lack of accurate information, that's really what we're missing here. So today, what we'll talk about is if we resolve our information challenge, how we can all discover that more is possible. But before we understand information as the solution, let's adequately mark out what the problem is. So through Apiary's work with teams and communities, we notice this consistent problem. There's a pattern where people operate in, as I spoke about, immense ambiguity, to the point where when we get in a room as facilitators to these communities, everyone is like, we do not understand each other. We're all swimming in incredible amounts of ambiguity. They don't understand the vision for the protocol. They don't understand the strategy for how to get there. They don't understand what success means in metrics. And then on an individual level, they don't understand their role in the system. They do not understand who has power, how decisions are made, or what decisions need to be made. So in short, while people have access to a ton of information in these digital communities, it's not the information that is accurate or curated for themselves. And it's hard information to get when you don't have social engagements and relationships. So we generally see three things, and I want to point these out because you may have experienced them in your own spaces. Zach backstage asked me, I was like, can I take questions from the audience? And he was like, it's a little bit hard, but why do you want to do that? And I said, because every single one of these people is operating with a different set of information. And it is why Apiary has to build bespoke systems, because every single person is bringing in their own beautiful information to this giant information set. But the only way you can get there is if you stop and ask people, what are they dealing with? What is your problem? What does that look like for you? What are you missing? So I'll point out a very specific one. If you are part of a community, you may find that the operators and the leaders in that community, it feels like they don't have accurate information. So labs, foundations, founders, they often think they know the desires and the challenges of their communities, but I'll be blunt, they don't. And so why is that? It seems so obvious to me. You have a founder, should know exactly what's going on, but they don't. And it's because the information that they're receiving on the receiving end is biased. And when someone is in a position of authority, particularly because they have clarity amidst the ambiguity. For example, if somebody has a role in a foundation, they have clarity, and that clarity provides them with power. And then that person goes out, the one with clarity and authority, and they canvass information from their community. But what's interesting is that the information that people are going to provide them, the information that people with lesser social power are going to offer, is biased because it's curated to manage the relationship, right? It's very hard for the social powers and the actual human dynamics that exist in every system to be elevated and understood. So how do we solve this, right? At Apiary, we do a lot of community science and community research. Anytime we go to work with a client, the first thing we do, whether or not the client is excited about it, is we go out and we talk with their community. Because we don't know what every single person is thinking. We don't know what their needs are. And often the information they've received to date has been out of place and misunderstood. It is biased based on the position that they hold inside of the larger ecosystem. This community research, and I think that there are a lot of firms doing it, and it's really exciting to me, and the more we can lean into that, the better off we'll be. The community science, the community research, it allows for the community members to express themselves directly, and then for the information they provide to be assessed and understood by a neutral party who is an observer and not a participant. So this is the first challenge we see. A lack of accurate information, because the information that's being passed around is often social. It's often inside of power dynamics that are very hard to explain or understand. We can all point to who has the most tokens as who has power. But influence and control are very different things. Tons of people have influence inside of a system. They might not all have token control, right? So we want to think about that when we go to understand these very ambiguous landscapes. The second thing we see is that communities do not have places to share information. And personally, this one breaks my heart more than anything else. We put a session on this week for a group of delegates, and it was incredibly touching. We spent a whole day together. And at the end of the day, we asked, what is it that you really need? And they said, we need to talk to each other in real life. We need to understand that people's intentions are good. We need to stop and ask questions. And it's so evident that every community has this deep desire to communicate, but the places that they're communicating don't serve their needs. We have forums that are so formal, it will take weeks to put up a proposal. And then on the flip side of that, we have discords that are so noisy, nothing can actually take root. So to use a gardening analogy, there's actually nowhere for seeds to germinate. We don't have small spaces with a clearly articulated purpose so that we can form the relationships and the trust that not just the ecosystem needs, but actually every individual needs. You all have connection in your life. And you know that when you don't, you probably feel sad and depressed, right? And we want these things from our work as well. We want these things from the communities and the engagements we have. We are all there because we care so deeply. But the digital spaces haven't actually been curated to allow us to have those communications and that trust building. I want to pause here a little bit because I often hear people, when I say that, they say, no, we can't exclude people. We can't make these smaller spaces because it'll leave somebody out. And I think that that's the wrong counterpoint. When we create small and safe spaces, we are actually including new ideas and giving them a chance to be planted and watered before we expose them out to the elements. It is not about excluding people, it is about including ideas. And the cool thing about digital spaces is that you can make a whole bunch of them. You can do them in all sort of cross sections of interests and functional desires, like what area of work do you want to be in? What question are you asking? You can meld and mold them. And I think that that's an incredibly beautiful opportunity we all have. And that I think that because you're in this room, I would argue that you are in a position of social power within your community to create that. So we have a lack of accurate information and a lack of space to share that information. And what does that create? Obviously, there are governance decisions that are being made without expert or localized information. So we don't have the accurate information from our community, and we do not have the spaces where accurate information can be communicated. And the result is that we are trying to create the output of useful governance without any of the correct inputs. And I'll ask one last question. I really love asking questions, and I wish I could hear your questions, so please find me afterwards. But I'm wondering how many of you have ever felt like a decision that was within your domain or within your understanding, it was made, and you actually felt like you didn't have a voice in that conversation, whether it was in Web3 or outside in the world. Yeah, it sucks. It fucking sucks. I'm just going to say it. I don't think there are children in the room. It's appropriate. It really sucks. And I am so sorry that that happened to you, but I'll also point out that you get to be in this room today. And I'm sure that you are in a position of power in many of the communities and the areas that you operate in. And I really encourage you to take ownership of that. Almost exclusively with the clients I have worked with, there are people who have the authority and the information to make decisions, but they live in this ambiguity, and so they don't. And I am telling you, we all live in ambiguity. It is fine. Step forward and use that social power, because it will help others understand where they fit and how to navigate ambiguity. Oh, I have to tell you before I head off, we had another client, and we mapped all the decisions that they had to make in governance, and it was over 150 explicit decisions that ranged from technical decisions to upgrade the protocol, to treasury management, to organizational and operational design. And can you imagine making those decisions without any of the correct information in the room? How many of you nodded when you were like, yeah, I didn't get to have my voice in something that mattered and was important and that I had information and expertise about? And there are tenfold of you out there nodding the same thing in their areas of expertise. And so when we work with clients, what we do is we map all of these decisions in advance so that we do not need to wait for the chaos and for the crisis in order to make decisions. We aim to map as much as we can to have the depth of understanding, to take things out of ambiguity and into structure, so that the correct information can be in the room, so that the expert who has the context can provide their information, and so that every single person can feel empowered to move beyond the ambiguity. So in order to effectively decentralize operations, we need to address the information challenge that we face. We can use community research as a way to gather less biased information. You are always welcome to find me personally after this, or also online, or message us, use our website at apiary.xyz. We do a lot of community research. We always start there. We use that to curate the many perspectives from our community to understand, and then to create clarity amidst the ambiguity. Because we have enough to do. We are changing the world. We are creating new industries. And every single one of you has a role in that. So I just want to say thank you. And I hope that it helped alleviate just a moment of your experience to know that you are not alone in your ambiguity today. Thanks.